is Backfire.
Hey, welcome back, Clevelanders, to Backfire, another big segment. Before we get started this morning, we have a huge announcement we have to make.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes, the announcement is Franklin Chansey is now engaged to become married. Congratulations, Franklin.
Thank you.
I don't know if you know it, John, but
I did not.
Franklin is now engaged to become married. I'm going to have a new neighbor in my neighborhood.
It's led me to ask everyone if they're right with the Lord, because clearly the end times are upon us.
I asked Franklin what her specialty was, and he said that she lives over in Memphis now, and said that she has managed veterinarian clinics and so forth. And I said, "Oh, good." I said, "The SPCA is looking for a new manager."
Steve, you may have some little Franklins running around the neighborhood.
More importantly, I also understand that she knows how to spay and neuter. So.
Oh, okay. Well, you better worry about that. Right now it's been a really quiet neighbor over there. I don't know what's going to happen. There'll be a lot of little Franklins coming around and stuff like that maybe in the future.
Let's not get carried away.
Well, congratulations, Franklin.
Thank you very much.
Anyway, sometime you're going to have to bring the new to-be into the show with you. Is she political at all?
Far less than me, number one. But I do understand that she does like to occasionally watch the streaming broadcast of Backfire, probably for comic relief.
Probably so.
Well, if she's watching this or listening to this show, congratulations. You hooked a good one here, I'll tell you. All right, Franklin. Anyway, golly, what's going on since last week, guys? Anything particular you want to talk about? Anything local you want to talk about? Let's talk about the city wanting to get into the ambulance business.
They had some big meetings yesterday in the county and the city. It appeared.
Well, let's talk about some of that a little bit. Anything y'all want to talk? I know I just saw the headline where the city council looking at ambulance services. What in the world are we trying to do? Why would we want to be in the ambulance service business?
Well, Danny Lawson does an excellent job with the county service. I don't know why the city would look at that.
I have never seen a problem. I've had to use ambulances quite a bit in the last few years with my parents and so forth. I've never really had a problem. I didn't know we had a problem. So
we don't have a problem. That's probably one of the best run county departments we have.
Well, according to this article, George Poe with the city said the county's cutting back on services and so forth, and this fire department's got a response time of 4 minutes, and the ambulance is not getting there for another few minutes later. So they're already having to respond to emergencies when they get there. But back in the old days, if there was an accident, you didn't send an ambulance every time there was an accident.
Well, Lord, everybody goes now. The police go, the sheriff goes, the fire goes, the ambulance goes.
What's your opinions of this? I got yours. What's yours, Franklin?
I would need to see a lot more information that convinced me that there's a problem before I'd I mean, obviously, ambulance service is a vital tool. We all agree on that, and we want it to be very good service on top of that. Whether there's any evidence that we have a deficiency, I don't know what that would be.
Well, that was kind of excuse me. That was kind of a shocking thing to me that the city's thinking about trying to get a separate ambulance service. To me, we keep trying to talk about separate services, but why don't we talk about more united services?
Well, here you've got a case where the entire county, city included, is already covered, and they're already covered well. So why would you go there unless you're just interested in your entity and power and control? And then too many of these things boil down to power and control and revenue stream. Where can we find another revenue stream?
Well, the article didn't demonstrate a revenue stream. It demonstrated a deficit for a long period of time if they were to do this. So,
well, maybe it's a competition. Maybe they feel like they think it's wrong that golf course is unchallenged in its ability to be the biggest money loser probably in the history of the entire country. I can't imagine another city running an enterprise that's losing that big a chunk, percentage-wise certainly, of the city budget. So maybe they just feel like it's not fair for the golf course to always be the biggest money loser, and we're looking for another competition.
Well, unfortunately, I just don't know why the city, they lost some funds from the fire department when they split up, I think. So now they're looking for trying to get some funds back into the fire department and emergency services. Is that what it is?
They had to be fairly significant expenditures in order to undertake this. They have to buy a lot of equipment. They have to train more people. They have to then have to
salaries,
pay for
benefits.
maintenance and regular training and updating of all that. So
then plus think about what it does to the county. You've got a county that is geared up to provide coverage inside the city. Well, are they now going to compete for coverage? What
happens when you call 911?
Well, you have communities in the state where that actually happens. You have actual battles over, and we've run into that a little bit here with some of the private services at times, where a hospital wouldn't take you from this one or that one.
Number one, I don't know if there's any kind of service deficiency or not, but if there were, it seems to me that that'd be a perfect opportunity if the city felt that they could supplement that a little bit and help out rather than start all over again. So hard for me to understand this one.
All right, the next one is building codes.
Mm-hmm. That was a really interesting discussion from the article in the paper. It certainly appeared.
What's your opinions on the building codes? And I know your wife's into construction, so you have to be a little bit.
Well, that was actually the most
John.
Interesting. I don't claim to be an expert on this issue, so everything I say you can qualify that. It was interesting to me though that the chairman of the Regional Builders Association advocated for passing the new codes at the meeting yesterday.
What
per the article?
Well, they want it because it's going to help them.
Let me ask you a question, though, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody. Mm-hmm. But when you look at these associations, for example, is he a builder or is he a supplier?
Well, he was the chairman of the Ocoee Regional Builders Association.
But that association, all these associations include builders and it includes suppliers.
That's right.
Which you might have a very different viewpoint from a builder versus someone who would actually get to sell.
I don't know the answer to that. I couldn't begin to tell you if that's accurate or not.
He made the comment that homeowners are in support of adopting the proposed building codes.
Based on what?
That's exactly
homeowners
right.
or home builders?
Homeowners is
based on what? What survey have we done?
Home builders. Home builders.
Well, did he survey the membership?
I don't know.
And if he did, let's see the results of that survey.
Mm-hmm.
And how many of the builders actually belong to this? And what's the breakdown between the builders that belong versus the suppliers that belong? Mm-hmm. For example, let's say the home sprinkler thing we've talked about. If you're the company that will get to sell all of the pipes and all of the equipment that goes into a home sprinkler system, of course you support it. But everybody else, the homeowner that's got to pay for it, who probably doesn't think he really needs it, the builder who doesn't want to be held liable when it goes off and soaks all of the sheetrock down, they probably don't support it. So sometimes you've got to look at where people are coming from to understand why they support or don't support something.
Well, it's going to require more inspections. It's going to require more fees. It's just going to be another form of bureaucracy. It's just another form of bureaucracy is what I'm afraid of. Dan Rawls, I'm proud of him. A picture of him on the front page arguing about this, and he's gonna give him a hard time, and he should.
His argument was that we shouldn't have any state or regional building codes. We should only have local ones. That was what he actually advocated in that. I don't really know how I feel about that one. Frankly, to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure necessarily that our local elected officials always have the degree of understanding of those types of significant issues to actually create their own building code.
But you also know, Franklin, they're not going to create it. There will be companies that will come in and say, here's the most reasonable, here's this, here's that. That's the way these municipalities do. Now, I don't disagree with you, and I don't disagree with you from another aspect. When you go to, for example, New York City is now telling people that they can't have foam cups and they can't have more than a 16-ounce drink. I'm not thrilled with local governments telling me what I can and can't do.
Well, I mean, nobody would take the position that a lot of building codes are not necessary and reasonable. If you build a new commercial building, you have to put firewalls in.
Sure.
Everybody agree with that, right?
We have inspectors. There's enough things in place right now, I think, that could adequately cover what we need. I mean, I don't know why we need to go further.
Well, what they say, a lot of what they say is building materials change radically over time.
Makes it better, so we need less.
Well, but the regulations that apply to them no longer really serve a purpose with the newer materials, for example.
But you also have to admit that government has a need to continually justify its existence as well.
Okay, I guess I would probably say that as communities become more and more urban, people are packed in together closer and closer, and the issues that arise from deficiencies in construction have a greater threat to the public.
True, but as in anything, the key is, where do you draw that line?
Absolutely. I agree with that completely.
Well, I think the city has the ability to regulate these codes based on what they've already seen now and what's in place.
I need to know more about this, but part of the debate was the fact that apparently if we're more than 7 years out from whatever the most current code is, our state can impose the code on us of some sort. And so in some ways, by not embracing it, you over time would give up some of your autonomy. At least that's the way I understood the issue.
Well, I don't understand why we'd be bothered by that, because the county operates under a 40 or 50-year-old economic rules. Even though new ones have been adopted by the state, we refuse to adopt the new financial act. So, 40, 50 years on that, why should we be any closer up on building codes?
Well, I know that they're fixing to the county's going to vote on this in the next couple of weeks, I guess.
Well, it was interesting. I think Commissioner Charlotte Peak Jones,
who's a builder,
she's a builder, and she was one of the big advocates who was pushing the bill yesterday. So. Right. Again, I don't personally have the expertise to really answer these questions.
My only problem is if someone's going to come, for example, from the Ocoee Builders Association and make a statement that builders, support this, I personally, if I were a commissioner, I would want to know, A, what is your membership? And what's the breakdown of your membership between suppliers versus builders? And B, did you survey them? If you surveyed them, then give me the number. But don't come in and make a statement and I want to know where that statement came from.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd like to have a breakdown to go along with it. Is how many more rules and regulations is this going to affect?
Well, what are we fixing?
Yeah, what are we fixing?
What problem are we correcting? It's just like we talked about a minute ago with the ambulance. What are we correcting? What problem are we actually solving here?
That's right. And the cost. How's it going to affect cost in the future?
Well, I mean, we're already concerned about people's inability to afford housing. So at some point everything has to be a cost to benefit ratio. And the problem with government is way too little of the time do they ever evaluate the cost versus the benefit ratio.
Anyway, I think there's a lot of questions that have to be answered. I'd love to have Dan Rawls and Dennis Epperson come on the Whoop Radio. We'll just have a little debate about it right here live. What do you think?
That'd be fine.
All right, guys, I'm going to invite you both to come on Whoop Radio next week if you'd like to.
Here you've got two commissioners. How about Dan Rawls and Charlotte Peak Jones?
Yeah, and Charlotte Peak Jones. Let's have both of those, and Dennis Epperson and anybody else. So I'd like to have a good talk about this. This is going to affect Cleveland going forward, and they're going to be making some pretty hard decisions on this, and I think it's something the public ought to know. So if you're listening, folks, we'd like to invite you to come on the show next week. Let's talk about it.
There's federal legislation actually that's been put forward to force the federal government on every rule they put forward to do a cost-benefit analysis. Now, there's resistance. The government doesn't want to do it because these bureaucrats in Washington and really anywhere, they want to be able to do it without really being challenged on it. But there is effort on all levels of government to say, look, before you do something, tell us what you're fixing, tell us what it's going to cost, and tell us what it's going to do for us.
All right, moving on. How about the Wrecker Service?
I missed that one.
Well,
you have to update me there.
Well, the Wrecker Service has had a problem. There's a lot of hoo-la-la going on that because basically, let's say that you were involved in a minor accident or something. The police report was done. The wreckers called. Your car's towed in. Next thing you know, you've got some astronomical wrecker bill, and it wasn't even your fault. It was another person's fault. You're going to be charged for it. Why do they have escalated wrecker bills? A normal wrecker bill is, let's say, $90 or $50 or whatever it is. This is something that's like $450 or $550 or something like that. So that's kind of I don't have all the details, but that's where it is. It's escalated as record bills based on what normal cost is. What's your opinion?
Well, in a lot of communities, there's a cozy relationship between the law enforcement services and wrecker services, and they sort of are codependent upon each other to help out. But it's true, generally speaking, in a lot of those cases, the person who owns the car got no input into who's going to come do it, and they didn't get to judge what the cost was going to be either. So I can see where the problems arise.
Well, I think they're starting talking about forming a wrecker committee now or something, aren't they?
Well, I can tell you there's all kinds of problems. My wife's grandmother, as she got older in age, she lived up around Lee College, and we had a real problem with the kids parking off the road in the yard. And at one point we come over and there's a car completely in the yard.
Right.
Now, it was raining, it was muddy. We really didn't feel like the car was probably going to even be able to pull out. I called the police. The police come and they won't call the tower. And I'm not fussing about the police because they have their rules they have to follow. But she said, well, we can't have that towed because it's on private property. I said, I understand that. It's on our private property, not hers, not the owner of the car. Well, we can't tow it. So you can tow it. Well, when I called the wrecker service, they said, no, we won't tow it unless the police call us. So I'm sitting there with a car parked in the front yard doing damage to the yard, and I actually can't get it towed because the police, they said, well, if one wheel had been in the roadway, we could have had it towed. But because it's completely, I said, so if it's completely trespassing, then you can't do anything. She said, no, she can't. Now, the worst part was I said, well, then fine. If it's completely on my property, I'll just go get a baseball bat and I'll break the lights out. No, then we'll arrest you for vandalism. So there are some problems here that need to be addressed.
Well, I know there's signs that that says that on private property, some commercial private properties, I guess you would call it, that where your vehicle be towed.
Yeah, but that's the owner of the property deciding that.
Posting.
Right.
So if you'd on that property where that house was, if you'd posted a sign there in front of that and somebody parked there, would you have been able? Would that made them responsible for it?
I don't think so.
Frankly, that's a legal question.
Probably not. Probably not. But
so the problem there is you have people that can violate your rights and they basically have impunity because the system is sort of set up. And the problem with the whole scenario I described is everybody's looking to cover their rear end.
Yeah.
You know, no one wants to take responsibility. The problem is the government ought to make the person violating your rights, the person trespassing, they ought to be the one responsible for paying the bill.
Yeah.
So there are issues all over this to be looked at.
Well, you know, I know when there's an accident and, you know, they call the wreckers in there to pull the cars out and there's glass in the road and the wrecker drivers get out and they sweep the street and clean that up and so forth. There's got to be a more of a charge for the emergency service and here than just a normal come to my house, pick up my car and take it down here to the garage to have it repaired type scenario during normal working hours. This may be, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night or whatever. So, I guess the complaint is they're saying that they're escalating the prices. There probably has to be some kind of a escalated price. I'm not sure it's what they're currently charging. So.
Well, the market's a funny thing. You do this enough, and what you'll have people go to Walmart and buy a tow strap, and they'll hook it to the car, and they'll get their buddy over there with his four-wheel drive truck, and we'll have people towing. And the real problem with that is that's probably a much bigger problem and more dangerous for us as a society.
Well, there's more than one issue involved. If there's an accident out on a public road, the public has an interest in getting the vehicle off the road.
Right.
Okay. That may not be possible without a wrecker. So how do you most efficiently do that? That's a completely legitimate issue here.
Well, we've got a lot of new issues hitting the city and the county. So that's just another one.
But one of the reasons we form committees like that is because someone in government doesn't want to be the big boy that makes a decision. Sometimes you want to go, look, just make a decision.
Well,
when you're
talking about the public service that's being provided there, as opposed to purely private activity there, is it unreasonable to talk about the municipality or the government setting some sort of rate that's approved for that?
No, my point was you form a committee so no one individual has to take responsibility.
That's true. Okay.
Nobody wants to make a decision. So, hey, let's have a committee and then we can blame the committee.
All right. What about selling of the property on Peerless Road, the farmers market? Selling the county canneries off the table now.
That was obviously an emotional reaction to that. There's obviously a lot of people who have an emotional attachment to that particular property.
To the cannery.
John made the point last week, I thought a valid one. The cannery's probably a good service. It's a nice thing to have.
Yeah.
I don't know if it were relocated. I don't know why that would be such a terrible thing. There's no particular reason to be emotionally attached to that specific piece of property.
Well, so in other words, you're saying maybe we ought to sell the property.
If it's a good deal to sell the property, I don't know if it is or not, but if it is, relocate the cannery.
I know at one time it was a huge deal. There was a lot of money being offered.
Well,
for
my
that
thing
property.
is, I can't imagine why we can't discuss. I mean, any issue ought to be open for discussion.
That's right.
And the idea that we can't talk about it now, I've for years, and we're back now. We have the Rotary Dairy Show is there. Bill Hale, who was a pillar in the community for years, especially in the farm community. That pavilion is named for him. I understand all of that, and I probably would come down on the side of I'd like to keep that if we could.
Right.
But a responsible elected official is open to all avenues to look at what the best solution is. And so what bothers me is not whether we sell it or we don't sell it, but the idea that just asking about it gets you whacked over the head. I think Mylan Blake, in bringing it up, was being completely responsible. Look, we need to be looking at where we can get revenue instead of raising taxes on the public that's already burdened in this economy.
Well, and, he was looking at trying to sell some of the non-used assets that we have to raise money for this new school, Lake Forest Middle School. What are they looking at, $12-14 million here?
No, I think it's
in total expenditure.
Yeah, $12 to $14 million they're needing to come up with, and they don't have the money.
Now, does that include the 1/3 of the city?
I'm not sure, John.
I don't think so.
I don't want to say something that's wrong.
But
well, for example, I'll give you a good example. Somebody will go, well, gosh, we can't do that because Parks and Recreation is in the building. Well, guess what? 25 years ago, the Junior Achievement was in that building. Parks and Recreation were somewhere else. And amazingly, Junior Achievement survived a move. Parks and Recreation survived a move. They'll survive another move, Now, if you really look at it, you may say, look, it's going to cost X to move. It's going to cost X to do this. It's not feasible.
Looking
Great.
at the dollars and cents of the move, it's a completely different discussion from whether you can talk about it.
You may come to the conclusion it's going to cost more than it's worth.
Well, I know that when they started talking about building this, what do you call it, farmers market out here by the YMCA. Mm-hmm. I was pushing to build the farmers market downtown Cleveland.
Well, a lot of people looked at it and said, we already have a farmer's market.
And that's right.
Not spend any money.
That's exactly right.
Which is right where we're talking about at the Bill Help
Right.
event.
We already have a farmer's market. Mm-hmm. So why did we spend the money going out here and build another farmer's market when we already had one that had a cannery?
Right.
So, if we were going to build one.
Well, what's bad is government is really good at making positive decisions to spend your money. Look, we can build this or we can do that, and we're going to give you this service. The problem is that money has to come from somewhere. And it's kind of frustrating when it's easy to spend the money, but it's hard to try and either save the money or find the money outside of just raising taxes on the backs of the people.
Anyway, I think the cannery is a great thing, and I'm not saying do away with the cannery. In fact, I want to go use the cannery. I've been talking about this. That's on my bucket list. I want to go to the cannery and I want to learn how to can myself. I'd love to do that. I know I would, and I just haven't done it. And that's on my bucket list to do. But I'm not saying anything about that, but that's a valuable piece of property. And I think a nice new little cannery somewhere, maybe over here at the Bradley High School or someplace where they have the Future Farmers of America or something going on. Maybe something like this could work out.
Again, I think what Franklin and I both are saying is the idea that you can't talk about it. Let's say you sold the property for $1 million and you took $50,000 of it to build a new building for the cannery, a brand new spanking building with, some of the old equipment. Maybe you have enough left over to buy some new equipment.
Yeah.
How is that a loss to the community?
It's not.
So that's the problem. You have to be able to talk about these things to find the best solution.
All right. I think we're all in agreement on that, are we not?
I think we are.
Okay.
Kind of scary.
All right. One more thing, and then we're going to take a break. But President Obama visited Knoxville last week and jumped in on a nice Tennessee program that our governor has put in place. And
No. It's not the same program at all.
Oh, it's not.
No, he said that he took elements of it, used it as an inspiration.
Our program has a dedicated revenue stream. His program has no revenue stream.
Oh, well, I didn't understand it.
See, our program is tied to the lottery.
I thought he was wanting to adopt
what, a national lottery?
Yeah.
No, he has no revenue stream to pay for this.
So he's wanting to put it in place, and then it's kind of one of those unfunded mandates?
No, it's not an unfunded mandate. It'll be an expansion of the federal government, and it'll go to debt of an already overburdened, debt-ridden country.
Well, I know that the governor, when he put this in place, it was coming from the lottery
Money.
And also he got some private individuals.
It has a dedicated
Alan
revenue
Jones
stream.
here in Cleveland puts into it here in our community each year.
So in the Tennessee situation, you identified a revenue stream and you said, here's a program we're going to use Tennessee money for Tennessee students.
Right.
The president's program is just another entitlement. And what makes you think that four-year universities won't be next?
Well, I thought this president was doing something good, but what do you think, Franklin?
Well, you can have the fiscal conversation about it. I think that's entirely appropriate to talk about that.
Right.
Is he doing something good to make it possible for people to get junior college educations? By the way, there's an academic requirement in it too. You've got to make certain grades to get it, and so forth. Is that a good thing?
That's
Is that
good.
going to help improve the quality of the workforce, which helps businesses? Is it an investment as opposed to just an expenditure? I think those are all appropriate discussions. So I think the jury's far from out on that question.
All right, then let's reverse this.
Yeah.
Where do you think Mr. Obama would come up with the money to fund this?
Well, the projection was $60 billion over 10 years. So I
Are we
don't know.
already in debt, Franklin? Are we
course
already
we are,
spending
John.
more than we take in?
Sure, John, we are.
Well,
sure. We could
I don't
have
think
we could
that's
have some real discussions about why that is, but
well, yeah,
but
it's
yes.
because of entitlements. 70%. You could do away with every dollar,
or
every dime.
or reckless tax policy.
You
But,
could
know,
do it. He's already raised taxes, Franklin. How much more do you want to raise them? We have the highest corporate tax rate in the world.
He didn't raise the corporate tax
It's
rate.
the highest
Did
in the
he-
world.
Did he raise the
it
corporate-
needs to be
okay.
lowered.
Then don't say that.
It is. I didn't say
Guess
he raised
what?
it.
The
I said
president-
we
guess
have.
What? The president has proposed
My
lowering
point,
it, hasn't
Franklin,
he?
is and did he do it when he had both houses of Congress? No.
Did
And Obamacare has put
you got both
21
of them, or
different
y'all,
taxes
you think
in
y'all
place.
gonna be able to prove it?
All the matter of fact,
No.
folks, congratulations. January 1st, because of Obamacare, almost everyone's taxes went up significantly through Obamacare.
Franklin's quiet. Let's take a break.
My point just is
I have
it's
no
more.
idea.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Check into cash.
The cash you need is closer than you think.
Get an auto title loan today for up to $2,500 at Check Into Cash.
You drive home with the cash in your pocket.
Visit Check Into Cash for an auto title loan today, or get a payday advance for up to $425. Call toll-free 877-262-CASH. Title loan amount determined by value of car and ability to repay. Borrowers often use payday advances over a period of months, which can be expensive. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Guns, guns, and more guns. That's right, folks. U.S. Money Shops has just received a large shipment of pre-owned Glock 22s, 23s, and the awesome Beretta 8040D Cougar. These guns are law enforcement trade-ins that start at just $379.99 while supplies last. At U.S. Money Shops, there's no shortage of guns, so if you're looking for a great deal on a newer pre-owned gun, then check us out first.
Buy or sell or buy today. The better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Visit usmoneyshops.com for the location nearest you.
If you need a little green, Lending Frog is making deals. He'll lend you cash on any kind of wheels. Borrow just a little, or you can borrow big. Lending Frog is a new financial gig. It's hip to hop into cash. LendingFrog.com is making a splash. Dig it, dig it. Dig it, dig it.
Ever hear of
Speedy bonding? Oh, my brothers and sisters, when you're down and in trouble and you need a helping hand while you're in jail, Speedy Bond is the way to go. And they don't call them Speedy for nothing. And quicker than quick, they was right there to help you out. They got Speedy's got 25 years bonding people out of jail. Give them a call, Speedy's Bonding, and they'll make you feel like you're in another world. And the number is, Speedy's Bonding is 479-9905. The number is 479-9905.
Hello, my name is Andy Figglestaller with Ed Jacobs & Associates. We are an employee benefit and insurance broker in business for the past 20 years. The new healthcare law, also known as Obamacare, has finally arrived. The law is complex and the choices are confusing. You have questions, we have the answers. It is our passion to find cost-effective solutions for every client. The solutions will be different for every person or business. Let our knowledge, experience, and passion go to work for you. Contact us today and let us assist you through this process. Our phone number is 423-473-0202, or you can find us on the web at edjacobs.com.
Dr. Christopher Chase with Associates in Plastic Surgery now offers his patients the convenience of a Cleveland office at 2350 North Ocoee Street. Dr. Chase specializes for the ladies in breast augmentation, including lifts, reconstructions, and reductions, also tummy tucks or mommy makeovers, and facial rejuvenation, including facelifts, eyelids, brows, nose, and he also offers Botox procedures. Check out Dr. Christopher Chase. He is certified by the American Board of Surgery, the American Board of Plastic Surgery. He's a member of the American Society of Plastic Surgeons and the American Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgery. Check their website out at aprs.md. That's aprs.md. Call for your convenient appointment in Cleveland at 624-0021. 624-0021. 2350 North Ocoee. That's Dr. Christopher Chase.
If you're looking for a home, apartment, or office space, Jones Properties provides residential and commercial properties in the heart of the Southeast that will fulfill any need. Plus, Jones Properties is one of the fastest growing firms in the area, which offers you more security. When you're ready for a home, apartment, or in need for commercial office space, it makes sense to call Jones Properties first at 472-4000. Plus, you can get additional information by logging on to the website at www.jonesproperties.biz. Jones Properties is also looking to invest in properties. So if you have a property that you need to sell, call the professional team at Jones Properties first. They'll help you find the perfect property for whatever your needs. Call today 472-4000. And don't forget to keep up with Jones Properties on Facebook.
Okay, are we live? You're live. All right, we're live. We're back in the studio live, and we have a phone call. Let's take it. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Good morning, John. Steve, John, Frank. How you doing?
Hey.
Good.
I want to congratulate Franklin on his upcoming event.
Thank you.
I was going to ask him if she's Democrat or a Republican, but that doesn't matter.
Well, I think she's strongly on the fence right now.
Well,
but I'm working hard.
Talking about all kinds of stuff this morning. What do you think about a wheel tax?
I was one of the ones debated against it. It's a mistake. It's another revenue stream that'll just be lumped onto the backs of the working people of Bradley County.
Well, what I think about it is if they can come to one thing, like usually they start out $20 and raise it to $35, and there's a lot of people own more than one car. That's going to hurt them too. But I'm against it, to be honest with you. And
well, all across the state, it's up. The average, and this has been several years ago when we debated it, just from my memory, the average was something like $47 or $8, and you had counties that were $95 and $100.
Yeah. Well, guys, I do appreciate you.
Well, let me ask you a question. Hold on. Yeah. What do you think about the city being in the ambulance service business?
Well, I was going to bring up that, Steve. Back when in '68 I had a bad motorcycle wreck, and all we had then was 2 funeral homes coming to pick you up. And
yeah.
I actually heard the policeman say they was going to dispatch Fox Funeral Home, and that worried the heck out of me.
You made a good point there. I remember when the funeral homes did provide the ambulance service myself.
My opinion is on that. I'm just wondering if we overdone it a little bit on that. I don't know if we need all the ones we got here or not. What do you think about that?
Well, that's sort of our question. I mean, you're going further than we went. Do we need as many as we've already got? So why in the world would we be starting a whole nother service?
Yeah. Well, guys, I appreciate you.
All right, thanks. I can't imagine Mark Grissom coming to pick me up on the side of the road during an accident.
It would scare you, huh?
Yeah, and he did run an after-hours thing for New Year's to pick up the drunks.
That was nice.
That was
a good service.
That was a good service, and probably other companies could probably provide that service.
I know a few people who took advantage of that this time, and I know they were very grateful.
Yeah, but they were all Mark's friends. Did Mark have the bar set up in the back?
Well, I hadn't heard that part. But I did hear that they got home safely without arrest or injury, and so I say hoorah for Mark Grissom.
All right, that's great. Way to go, Mark.
That's true.
The wheel tax, he mentions the wheel tax that's we don't want any more taxes of any kind.
Well, the problem is government, instead of looking where we can work on our spending, where we can cut our spending, where we might be spending money that's not needed anymore, they always look where can we get more revenue.
Right.
Look, guys, I'm all for efficiency in government.
Right.
Everybody's for that.
Okay.
The fact is, over the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to need 15, 20, 25, 30 million dollars to put into our roads, streets, and bridges in Bradley County. Where's it supposed to come from? And there's not that kind of waste in our local budget. So honestly, have a serious conversation about it. Where is the money going to come from?
I'm going to say something before you start, John. And I'm going to say this. I'm going to be open-minded about it, and John's not going to agree with me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want any more taxes. But if there has to be a tax, I think a wheel tax is probably the most fair.
But here's the problem, Steve. We did this with the income tax. You had back in the 90s, you had McWhorter had talked about wanting an income tax because it was more fair, it was more fair, it was more fair. Then you had Republican David Copeland down in Ottawa. He said, fine, we will change the state constitution. We will put an income tax in the Constitution, but we'll wipe every other tax off of the books in the Constitution. And we'll set the rate, the percentage rate of this income tax in the Constitution. McWhorter wouldn't even allow that to come to the floor for a discussion. So the problem with what you're talking about is they'll go, just like the caller said, they'll go, well, it's only going to be $20. Well, then it's $30 the next year, and it's $40 the next year. And then they start bouncing back and forth. They raise this tax this year, that tax the next year, another tax the next year. When they come back to the other one, they go, well, it's been 3 years since we raised that tax. That's the problem with it. It's always about more revenue with them. And if you give them more avenues to get your money, to stick their hand in your pocket, they won't ever cut spending.
Can I give you a good example of this?
What?
Gas tax.
Well, actually, that's what I had brought up to talk about.
All right, let's talk about right now. The gas price went down. All they're wanting to do now, everywhere we go, is have more raise gas tax. Unbelievable.
Well, let me.
And who was the person proposing?
Well, Corker's one of them, and
he was the primary proponent for it.
Corker is one, and so is Pelosi.
We're just saying it's not right. Okay. This gas is going to go back up.
His answer was very simple and straightforward. We got to do something to deal with the Highway Trust Fund and how we pay for upkeep of our roads and bridges.
You're right.
That was a proposal. I doubt that he's saying I'm opposed to any other discussions for how we do that, but it's a serious problem.
All right, let me
give me solutions for how you do it.
I'll give you a solution, and I don't disagree with what Senator Corker said. He's right. We do need to fix our crumbling roads and bridges, but for every penny increase in the tax, gas tax, that will take $1 billion out of the wallets of consumers. So if you increase it 10 to 20 cents, that will take between 10 and $20 billion out of American citizens' pockets. Now, what Corker said is true, but the problem is that we're not, one of the things his quote was that we were stealing from future generations by not fixing the infrastructure. The stealing that's going on is in the actual trust fund of the tax, because what they're doing is the Congress siphons money out of that tax fund, the trust fund, and they spend it on worthless mass transit systems. You got a mass transit system, a high-speed magnetic rail being built out in California that almost nobody will use. Well, why should I, as a person driving on the roads who pays this gas tax to keep my roads up, why should I be funding a mass transit system in Los Angeles that maybe less than 0.1% of the total population will ever use? That's the problem. Take the trust fund for the gas tax, spend it exclusively on the roads and the bridges, and you won't need to raise taxes.
That's right. Let's take a call real quick. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Got a question for y'all.
Okay.
The monies that is distributed in the state of Tennessee for the supposed school lotteries, the money that comes in from the lottery in the state of Tennessee, if they would use the money that it's supposed to be set aside for the schools and education, they wouldn't be worried about the city and the county government in Cleveland arguing over who's going to build this school. Take the money that the state allots to the counties, build a new school, and go on. But and then take the rest of it and spend it on the bridges and the roads. Now, what's the deal here? I mean, all these people are wanting to go up on the gas tax. It's like John said, that's just a weight on the people's back to get the price of the gasoline to go back up so we can give it all to the people across the desert sands out there.
You think we ought to let them put the pipeline in?
Certainly I do.
Just wanted your opinion on that.
That's my opinion, because the economy would boom from this thing for the jobs that it's going to create. And, I mean, you know, the tax off of this gasoline is not going to be spent on the state's roads and bridges and stuff like that. These politicians up there in Washington are going to earmark this stuff and pork barrel this stuff, and it's going out here to buy new Cadillacs and $1 million homes, $2 or $3 million homes all over the United States.
Well, there's one in Kentucky. I believe they found some pork where there's
well, the Big Dig in Boston has gone from Lord, I don't. It's what quadrupled in price. It's the most expensive transit system thing they've ever done. It was what 10, 12 years over time. It was 2 or 3 times over budget. And how many people will actually ride that? So all of us with our gas tax paid for a incredibly wasteful, ridiculous. The Big Dig in Boston, from what I understand, I think they're on the verge of actually abandoning it after tens or hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent on it. So we all paid for that, and virtually no benefit will come from it. That's the point.
What about the museum they're building in Kentucky?
Yeah, do you guys honestly?
Did you hear that one?
Franklin and John, do you guys honestly think that if they go up on this gas tax, which is going to drive the price of gasoline back up, and there's no excuse for that, if they would drill here in the United States, there's enough oil to last the people of the United States for 300 years. And, you know, do you honestly think that this is going to be appropriated for the bridges and the roads?
Well, what the Colin, I'm going to take that as a question, and thank you for calling, okay? That's what they're going to say it is, and they will use some of the money there, but they'll find other pork fat projects that they're going to spend the money on. Right?
Well, that was the point, that if you restricted the trust fund, the highway trust fund, to only being used for our roads and bridges, building new roads, building new bridges, it's more than enough money. The problem is they dip into the trust fund and they spend it for other things. Now, I would think that even Franklin and I could agree that if you say this is what that money's for, that's where you ought to spend the money to begin with.
Would you agree to it if they did that?
Well, look, I'm not knocking the people that say we've got to fix the infrastructure, but you do know that all of the studies that they cite about our infrastructure are all done by groups of people who build infrastructure. They're the highway builders, the bridge builders, and I'm not knocking them. We obviously do need that, but we don't need our federal money being spent in Boston on a boondoggle.
Anyway, I just can't believe. I mean, we just came out of the highest gas price. I mean, I can't imagine Americans living through this. I remember when gas went up to $1 back in the old days. I thought the world was going to come to an end, and now that it got as high as it got, that we actually survived it. But now that it's going back down, and trying to get somewhere where it's a reasonable price and put some dollars back into people's pockets. I mean, this directly affects your cost of living.
You and I might agree that a gas tax may not be the best way to do this. What I don't agree with is the notion that we don't have a major crisis brewing with infrastructure
Nobody
in this
said that.
country.
We said we
and
did.
I haven't heard anybody who's critical of this proposal give me a serious proposal for how to deal with that.
I just gave you
Well,
one.
and with all due respect, I don't think those numbers add up.
How do you know? Has anybody told you? Has anybody studied
I've seen
it?
what the expenditures that are required over the next decade to 20 years are, and those numbers don't add up.
Well,
and I will also tell you this. A huge percentage of road building and road construction budgets in the state of Tennessee come from federal revenues that come back to us.
Franklin.
No, hold on. No.
I agree, but we are in debt. We're spending more than we take in. We have to stop this somewhere. So to simply say, hey, we get federal dollars.
I didn't say anything
we pay
about
the federal
that. What
dollars.
I'm saying to you is it's a stick your head in the sand approach to say, oh, well, we just got to cut this spending out. Really? How are you going to pay for it then?
How much money does the trust fund generate each year?
Well, it has fallen as a share of the budget because of changes in our driving patterns and improved gas mileage. That's one of the issues. It generates
$34 billion a year. That's a lot of money.
That's nothing compared to what's needed for infrastructure.
Well, Franklin, if that's the case, why are they stealing money out of it and building the big dig in Boston? Or
$34 billion doesn't even come close to meeting.
Well, let me ask you another question.
It doesn't.
Let me ask you another question.
I think it could.
Here's a quote from Nancy Pelosi, and I want to ask you a question about it. Pelosi says, now this is a quote: if there's ever going to be an opportunity to raise the gas tax, the time when gas prices are so low, oil prices are so low, is the time to do it. Okay.
Sure.
Now let me ask you a question. Does that mean that when the gas prices start going back up, she'll remove the tax?
No.
Well, if you use the low tax as justification for why the American people can take it, wouldn't you, if you were being honest, wouldn't you have to say, I'll remove it?
I'm much more cynical than that, John. I don't think that statement had anything to do with what you just said. What she was talking about was politically, it's the time to do it.
But
it wasn't economically the time.
So you don't care about the backs of the American
people. I didn't say anything about it. I'm not proposing
this. Well, she doesn't care apparently.
I'm not proposing it. I'm just telling you what she was actually talking about.
If you're right about your assessment, then she doesn't give a damn about what the American people have to do.
What I am saying to you is, if you're just going to come in here and tell me government spends too much, and that's all you've got to offer about this, I just think it's absurd.
All right, let me ask you
the roads and bridges are crumbling.
All right.
They're falling down, and you've got no solution for dealing with it.
I do have a solution. Let me ask you if you'd support this. If your case is correct, and I think it is correct, would you support as a first step to restrict the Highway Trust Fund to only being used for highways and bridges?
As part of a comprehensive plan, yes.
Fine. Okay, now then,
comprehensive
we started fixing the problem, because I'm telling you, when you go back, when you go back and you look at where the money's being spent right now, Frank, there's billions of dollars that are not being spent on the roads just for the repair of the roads. There's a museum in Kentucky that was just approved
under the road fund.
Under the road fund. Also, let me say something else. Let's say out here on 25th Street, they come in there and they pave all of 25th Street every, 8 years. They just put a new layer of asphalt.
Whether it needs it or not.
Whether it needs it or not. But it's scheduled to be done.
Okay, well, we all, at various times over the life of this show, have sat here and criticized the government for not doing exactly that, which is planning regular maintenance on things before problems develop. That's exactly what we do.
Well,
so you're saying now they do this, but that's a waste.
No, regular maintenance is different from completely repaving one road. I've asked the city, I said that road didn't need it, and I've had them go, no, it didn't, but it's the state and the feds, and they do it whether you need it or not.
That's exactly right. It's amazing.
But frankly, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about these rail systems. Very few people will ever use these high-speed rails, and yet we're all paying for it. Now, it's one thing if every road and every bridge in the country was in excellent shape and we had excess money and we said, okay, we want to use that for a experiment with a rail system. But that's not the case. Every bridge in America is not in good shape. Fix those first before you waste money on the big dig in Boston. Fix that first before you build a high-speed rail between Los Angeles and San Francisco.
How about the battery charging systems they put around the country
which are a complete disaster?
I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen anything hooked up to the one at Cracker Barrel.
Well, at least in that case, Cracker Barrel, I hope, paid for that. I hope we as taxpayers didn't pay for
No, that was a taxpayer.
At Cracker Barrel?
Yes.
Well, how do they pick which restaurant to put it at? That's a benefit to Cracker Barrel.
Let me give you a local spin on this. Okay? I just pulled this up here. This is Tennessee.
All right.
Okay.
Good. All right.
The Tennessee Department of Transportation's budget is currently $1.8 billion a year.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? $900 million of that comes from the Federal Highway Trust Fund. 50% of it.
Okay.
Well, I'm just saying.
Is it being spent on our roads?
In Tennessee?
Yeah.
Do we have a lot of big mass transit
Is
projects?
it all being spent on our roads?
I would say the vast majority of
I
it.
tell you what, you've got people right here in town that build roads that will tell you Bredesen regularly siphoned money out of the trust fund, the road fund, to do other projects. That's our problem, Franklin. Don't lie to the people and say, no, I'm not talking about you, government. Don't lie to the people and say, we need this for roads and then not spend it on roads.
Governor Haslam, last time I checked, was a Republican. Last time I checked, the General Assembly was dominated by Republicans. They've just announced they've shelved, temporarily we hope, 13 road projects in Tennessee because of uncertainty about whether this trust fund is going to run out of money or not. They're totally dependent on all that federal money to maintain roads and bridges in Tennessee. They couldn't do it without massive increases in taxes here.
Well, what if the feds just took the federal gas tax off and turned it back over to the state to tax it as they saw fit and use it as they saw fit in the state?
It wouldn't solve the $900 million in Tennessee.
Well, one, it would get rid of an entire branch of government siphoning a portion of the money off.
You'd be going down the highway and go boom, 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 boom. Kind of like that deal between here and Birmingham.
I can tell you that I talked to road builders years ago, and they said that if the state, and this was I don't know if it's still going on or not, but if the state would leave the fund alone and not take money out of it for other issues, there would be more than enough money to fix the roads and bridges. And my point again, Franklin, is why not try that first? Why not limit the fund to what it's actually told to the public it's for, and then see if you need more money?
I'd like for someone to go in. What is the senator who puts out the deal each year about
Coburn?
I wonder how much he's got in the in this for that. How much waste is going from that?
Well, his last report was just a month or so ago.
I'd like to look that up, and maybe we can look that up and give that report next week. 60 Minutes. I watched 60 Minutes this week. I don't know if you've got it, had a chance to. I don't normally watch that, but I thought it was going to be interesting this week. They were talking about marijuana and in Colorado, legal marijuana, and then they talked about another issue with 60 Minutes talking about Obamacare. So I watched it this week, and it was kind of interesting. 60 Minutes, I couldn't believe it, just called Obamacare a disaster.
Well, a person they interviewed on 60 Minutes said that.
But he's writing a book about it right now.
Sure.
But, he said basically that Obamacare was put together in back rooms by politicians and lobbyists. And, there was nothing negotiated about reducing costs. They told Mr. Obama that if he was going to try to reduce costs across the line, he'd never get what he wanted. So basically they put together a system where the only cost factor who's going to pay the difference is the taxpayers. It's going to cost the taxpayers more.
And so this person that they were interviewed,
everybody's getting more money
as John
out
has
of it.
pointed out, actually was advocating for more government control of health care.
Well,
That's what he was advocating.
What I said was I agreed with his diagnosis that it's a disaster and it doesn't have any cost containment, which the Obama administration told us it would do, and it has not done.
Well,
and will not
respectfully,
do. I disagree with his treatment. His treatment is for the government to take control of even more of it. And the problem is when you they'll come and they'll tell the public, we're going to control it and we're going to keep these costs down. Well, the way they're going to keep the costs down is they're going to cut reimbursements to hospitals and to providers. And guess what? People are going to quit providing. you won't have a doctor to go to. You'll have complete coverage for any service you can find a doctor that will actually treat you for.
Well, he said that the hospitals got on board with it, and they are on board with it now, because the government promised them more patients.
Right. But the problem is, it's what we said all along.
More, excuse me.
There is no free
more
lunch.
paying patients.
There is no free lunch. Somebody has to pay for
That's
this.
right. And it's going to be the taxpayer.
By the way, the Medicaid expansion that Governor Haslam is producing, a liberal think tank, this is a left-wing think tank, has said that 88% of all the people that will qualify under the new Medicaid expansion are able-bodied, non-child holding single adults.
Who are working.
Franklin,
Who
they're
are working.
able-bodied.
Who are working and can't
And so you're going to
access
put them on the
healthcare.
government rolls.
Who can't
It's
access health care
Because of what? Can they access cigarettes? Can they access tattoos? Can they access
Yes, and
beer? Can they go to the movies?
And they're all just scum,
Franklin,
siphoning money.
how do you
off
ever
the
get
top
them off the roll?
1%.
How do you get them off the roll, Franklin? The last time we did this under
by getting them
Bredesen,
better jobs, by
the
paying
last
them
time
more
we did
money
this,
for
it
working.
well, talk to your president, because he's the one producing the low-paying minimum wage jobs in his economy that he's now bragging
The
about.
goofy tax policy.
By
that
the
we
way, in the
produced
fourth
is that.
quarter, the GDP is almost exclusively related to the increase in premiums from Obamacare. Almost all of the GDP increase in the fourth quarter of the year came from the increase in Obamacare costs.
John, you could not tell a bigger whopper than that.
No, actually,
You could not tell a bigger whopper than that.
It's the truth, Franklin. You may not like it. Franklin, your governor.
Retail sales enormously.
Your governor.
Construction was up enormously.
Franklin,
manufacturing was up enormously, and it's all from Obamacare?
Yes.
Really?
Actually, the bulk of it was attributed to Obamacare.
When in fact, healthcare costs went up less than at any point in the
But
last
Franklin,
decade.
the president
and that-
sold this by saying they would go down. They're still going up. And you still have 30 million people uninsured. This is a disaster, Franklin. Bredesen is the very governor, the Democrat governor Bredesen, is the one that said Medicare or TennCare, which was the former version of what Governor Haslam is proposing, almost bankrupt the state. And we kicked 180,000 people off of it when we finally said, we just can't pay for this. And now we're going to go right back down the same road.
You guys just make this stuff up as you go. I'm going to back up for just a moment because I've been sitting here researching
I'm
this
just
while we're
going
doing
to
this.
listen to you, Franklin.
I'm going to back up for just a moment to our previous topic here. This is really interesting. Between 2000 and 2002, expenditures in Bradley County for roads were $12,917,000. 53% of that was money delivered here by the state. My point of that is simply that everybody says we don't want our taxes done, but nobody wants to step up and just do it locally. Do you know what it would do?
So it takes a federal bureaucrat to cram it down our throat?
No. What I'm saying to you is none of you have the gumption to stand up and tell taxpayers and citizens, we need to do this, and here's what it's actually going to cost, and this is what we're going to have to do to your taxes to pay for it.
What
and
if,
we won't need
you
the
know
federal
what? You're
government
right,
then.
Franklin,
We'll just
and
do
you know
it.
why we don't say that?
Because you lack the courage
because
and the honesty.
No, we have plenty of courage in order. What we
No,
say
you don't.
is, guess what, folks? There's limited amount of money, and I don't believe in raising taxes. I believe in cutting the wasteful spending.
You lack the courage to look people in the eye and tell them the truth.
You're going to talk about courage
you
as a
love
liberal
your
Democrat.
philosophy so much
All you want to
that
do
you
is
won't
give
tell
other
them the
people's
truth.
money away. So
The
you're okay
truth.
giving other people's money away, but you won't ever tell them you need to work for something.
Tennessee, like most of the southern states, takes more back in than they give away.
Which is a disaster that should be stopped. And the only way to stop it is to cut spending, not raise taxes.
Another segment of Backfire. Folks, it's been great, but we're out of time. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye now.
Okay, my brothers of another mother, here's a home remedy. You know, the body sometimes we really have to give it what it needs. it crave for food sometimes. But I'm going to recommend that, coming from the old school, that there's a lot of people that suck wind out there. If you know what I'm talking about, they suck a lot of wind. So sometimes you might have to replace that by taking a spoonful of castor oil to coat yourself a little bit. Now, the way that I do mine, I usually take me a shot glass, and I would fill the shot glass halfway up with castor oil. Put it in the microwave and let it heat for 24 seconds and turn that baby up. You won't even taste it. Word from Unity.